All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Joe Keegan. I'm the mayor of Castleton-on-Hudson, and I'd like to welcome everybody to Castleton. As you can see, Castleton is located on the shores of the historic Hudson River, and right now we're inside of Schodack Island State Park, which many of us consider one of the best kept secrets of the Capital Region. I'm excited to be here today as we welcome federal, state, and local officials to talk about the Castleton-on-Hudson Bridge. It's an important part of our community, and it links us with our friends and neighbors over in Albany County, the Catskills, and many other wonderful parts of New York State. There's always been a little bit of friendly rivalry between which side of the river is better, but one thing we can all agree on is the bridge is really important to all of us because it joins us both. Having dignitaries here today, such as the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, Congressman Paul Tonko, and our Governor, Kathy Hochul, to talk about the bridge is a tremendous honor. And I just want to thank them all for honoring my community as much as we do. And now I'd like to introduce someone who has represented New Yorkers on both sides of the river and is a tireless advocate, Paul Tonko.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. To all of my colleagues in the elected and appointed ranks, to those from federal and state agencies and local government, local agencies, to all who are here, the contractors, the skilled labor people, and certainly the engineers and planners who make all of these dollars work and work effectively. Thank you for joining us. And it is such an honor, Mr. Secretary, to welcome you here with the governor and certainly with the mayor and with our Representative Steve, who's going to be introducing you. But it does my heart good to know that we have a former mayor serving as Secretary of Transportation. Who knows it better? They plan, they envision, they really look for comeback scenarios for their communities. And where is the money? How do the revenues happen? And so that sensitivity, that soulfulness that the Secretary brings is ultra important to the discussions that we've had on infrastructure. I have advanced a strong infrastructure measure in the caucus. I've worked with my colleagues. I made certain that it was going to be holistic. Why? Because we need to invest across the board in our infrastructure. We cannot invest enough attention to these issues because we cannot cut our way to a strong economy. We need to invest our way to a strong economy. Why? Because much has been backburnered. Look at the transportation sector. Our roads and bridges received deficient ratings. I served in the state assembly and was host as a community, as a district, to a collapse of our Thruway Bridge that claimed 10 lives. So I know infrastructure maintenance and construction are important topics. I also know that when we invest $66 billion nationally in our efforts, certainly for transportation, making certain that Amtrak, getting that $66 billion, is the largest investment made since its inception in 1971. $39 billion, the largest investment made in transit in the history of our country. That's important to transportation. Water infrastructure, which falls under the subcommittee that I once chaired, now am ranker on. We were neglecting our water infrastructure, corrosion from without, calcification from within. It deserves the $55 billion that goes towards our water infrastructure. Broadband. We all know there are pockets in our communities and various neighborhoods that are either underserved or unserved by broadband. So having that $65 billion effort for broadband is important. It goes on and on. $25 billion for the grid. If we're going to integrate renewable, clean, green energy into the grid, we need a state-of-the-art grid. So we're in the midst of a global economy, a global competition, and we need to invest in America. And it's the boldness and the vision of President Biden, the effectiveness in producing the most strong outcome of Congress since 1965. That just didn't happen. It took a lot of effort, a lot of vision, a lot of advocacy. And deep into that advocacy was Secretary Buttigieg, who wanted to make certain that we did the transportation piece and did it well. So we are proud of this effort. I am proud that we have worked as a House. I wanted to make certain that we did have this holistic approach to infrastructure. And what's really important, the president appointed a team as making certain that the accountability and the transparency of these programs and the investments are done as legislatively and executively intended. So it's good stewardship of these dollars. It creates jobs, it strengthens our national security, and creates stronger, deep hope for tomorrow. It enables us to have a razor-sharp competitive edge in a very competitive, robust sweepstakes that is now occurring globally. So this is a huge investment, and it's going to create a lot of jobs. So with that, I'm really happy to be with you today, and I'm really thrilled to be able to introduce my former colleague in the House, who worked alongside me, and she alongside, and I alongside her, to make certain that New York, as a delegation, delivered, because we're a great empire state that has great vision of how to move forward. Governor Hochul has put together a very strong energy and environment agenda, of which I'm very proud. We connect all the time on that effort, but she knows too, as an upstate resident that now serves in the executive post, that it's about creating a strong and vibrant economy here in the upstate region. So we've got a great friend in the governor, great performance. I know she's in the midst of her budget negotiations. We know that'll be helpful, but it's been fun to be able to deliver these federal dollars and knowing they'll be implemented very well. Thank you, Governor. I present to you our wonderful Chief Exec, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Thank you, Congressman. It is always great to be back in your district, as we often are, making great announcements, because you are an incredible champion. I remember our time together in Congress, and there was no project too small that you didn't go after and make sure that your constituents were well served. So thank you for your service then, your service now, and for being a great friend as well. I also want to say to our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, we literally saw each other on St. Patrick's Day up in Buffalo when we were announcing a project that we are so proud of. So proud of, $1 billion from the state of New York with support from the federal government to reconnect communities that were divided by decisions made back in the 50s, that it was okay to go through a black community with a superhighway to make sure that people could get to the suburbs faster. So we're reversing those kind of projects, not once, not twice, but 3 places in the state of New York, leading our nation in using transportation, infrastructure dollars as a way to right the wrongs of the past. So thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for you're a champion of those projects, but also being here once again in the state of New York. I think you're starting to play favorites, and we're okay with that. Also, we're joined by our Senator Tim Kennedy, who chairs the Senate Transportation Committee, representing Buffalo in the area we spoke about. So I thank him for all he has done championing for the state and making sure that we get good union jobs, taking care of our contractors. We're joined by Frank Hoare, also our acting director of the New York State Thruway Authority. Tip a hat to you there, Frank, it's for you. Also, the keeper of this beautiful park. We do have a lot of hidden jewels, and my job as governor is to unveil these jewels, and that is Eric Kulisade, our Commissioner of Parks and Historic Preservation. And Mayor, former colleague, and it's just like our secretary, I'm a graduate of local government. That's how you learn the rough and tumble. When you're in a situation where the public can ask as many questions they want, you're there as long as they want, and you become really accessible. And I wanted to take the lessons I learned in local government, lessons that the mayor lives by every single day and what the secretary lives by, about how to be responsive to the people. That becomes part of who you are when you start in local government, where I spent most of my life. And so I'm really proud to have a mayor here who's really making a difference in this wonderful community of Castleton-on-Hudson. And I'm not playing favorites, east side or west side of the Hudson River either. Love the whole state, but this is spectacular over here, and the quality of life is second to none. It really is here. So the people who call this area home, you are fortunate, and it is a great place to live. And that's what I'm focusing on making New York State more livable, more safer communities, as well as more affordable. A lot of our policies are focusing, yes, climate transition, but also how we can make sure it's affordable for our constituents. But one thing that's so important is to make sure that this state has 21st century infrastructure. For far too long, these priorities were neglected. The federal government under previous administration did not focus on this. And I used to work for Senator Moynihan, and he was chair of the Infrastructure Committee. There was a time when people didn't play politics with infrastructure dollars. You didn't have battles The money went to localities, whether they're Democrat, whether Republican, it didn't matter. And that all changed and became much more challenging. But to have President Biden putting such a focus on how infrastructure dollars can change people's lives, not just in roads and bridges, but as we mentioned, infrastructure now constitutes making sure the internet is accessible to everybody as well. There's so many ways that he has used his office to transform people's lives across this nation. We're grateful for President Biden. We're grateful to have Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is constantly out around the state of New York representing us, as well as his national responsibilities, and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So with Paul Tonko, we have the Dream Federal Team. I'm grateful to have that, and also you're starting to see the results of that. You know, there are only 5 or 6 places in the nation today where the Biden administration is fanning out to make these kind of announcements. This is the only place in the Northeast where this is happening. This bridge right here. This shows that communities, no matter what the size they are, they matter to this administration. So I'm so proud to partner with them, and I'll keep doing my part. We put forth $32.8 billion in a transportation capital plan a year ago. We are spending it everywhere. And we started with this project, knowing that a bridge that was built in 1959, think about that, the babies that were born that year, they're now retiring. So this bridge needs a facelift. It's been getting old, and there's a lot of potholes, and it's basically compromised. And for our trucking industry and our commuters and people use the bridge, it has become a real hassle. And when we start slowing down the economy because the infrastructure has not made the roadways as smooth as they should be and efficient as they should be, then we've got a problem that affects larger areas than just that one bridge. And that's what we're here to talk about. So this bridge has over 6 million vehicles yearly, 17,000 a day. But as I said, it's deteriorated, potholes, guardrails, and even dangerously narrow lanes. And we started a $47.6 million project. It wasn't enough. So the $21 million here today is going to get us over the finish line and do it right. And that's why I'm so proud to be here as well. And Mr. Secretary, come anytime you want. We are so happy of your interest in our state and making sure that we all live what President Biden has asked us to do, is to take care of each other, take care of our communities, create good union jobs, make sure that families have good access to the goods that they need when the transportation networks are working the way they should. So it all comes together with projects like this, and I'm so proud to be part of this. And I want to also introduce someone who can tell you what it's like to travel on roads like this and bridges like this when they are substandard, and what a difference it makes and why it's so imperative that we work together, federal, state, and local, to get the job done. With that, I'll introduce Stephen Irwin from Clinton's Ditch Co-op, and he'll tell you exactly what that's all about.
Okay, Steve.
Thank you, Governor. When I was asked to speak at this event, I didn't realize I was going to be with such an esteemed group of people that are behind me. Secretaries of Transportation, governors, congressmen, and mayors. I'm just a trucking guy, so bear with me. My name is Steve Irwin. I am the transportation manager for Clinton's Ditch Co-op in Cicero, New York. I've been in that position for 25 years. I've been in the trucking industry for 44 years. Clinton's Ditch is a independent Pepsi bottler located in Cicero, just outside of Syracuse. We bottle over 28 million cases of Pepsi, Pepsi products, water, tea, all kinds of non-carbonated and carbonated beverages. Those beverages are distributed throughout 12 states in the Northeast on our fleet. Our fleet travels a little over 4.3 million miles a year. As a EPA SmartWay certified carrier, one of our focuses is always on being efficient and environmentally friendly. We strive every day to meet those two goals. One of the ways that we do that is the bulk of our freight goes out in what we call tandems. It's one driver pulling 2 trailers, 2 48-foot trailers. We have 3 sister companies in Ayer, Massachusetts, and a raw material plant in Littleton, Mass, that we ship to and from multiple times every day. And one of the ways we accomplish that is by hauling tandems. When the bridge behind us continually closes for emergency repairs, it never gives us a comfy, cozy feeling, but it gives us a huge logistic problem for our tandems, because we can't go on the detour with the tandems. So we have to break them apart in Albany, shuttle the trailers over individually to the Mass line, and then put them back together again to go double into Mass. What that does for a round trip, it adds another 148 miles, 3 hours of driving time, which is extremely precious to our drivers today, and it also causes us to burn an additional 24 to 25 gallons of fuel. Not being environmentally friendly doing that. So to say that the safety of the interstate, this bridge, and the infrastructure is important to us would be an understatement. I also serve on the board of directors of the Trucking Association of New York, and we're always advocating for this type of infrastructure, input into the infrastructure to help improve it. And I cannot tell you how pleased we are to see that this money is going to be coming to this bridge and making a huge improvement. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the person responsible for getting that money here, Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Buttigieg.
All right.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Steve, for illustrating the importance of this infrastructure work. When we get it right with public sector investment, we make it easier for the private sector and your employees and your workers, the people who count on you to thrive. And when you think about just all that added time when there's a problem, the cost of that, the cost for customers, as well as the cost to your company, the cost in terms of emissions, that's exactly why we need to be taking steps like the one we're announcing today. Really appreciate the chance to be, as always, with a fellow mayor, Mayor Keegan. I see the pride that you have in this community, and hope that everyone in your community can benefit from this. Appreciate Representative Tonko's words and work. To be clear, we are able to announce good news like this because your member of Congress and your senators were there with us when we were pushing so hard to get this infrastructure bill done. And as he mentioned, water is part of that. Broadband is part of that. That holistic approach that he stressed was controversial 2 years ago. A lot of people said if it isn't a road or a bridge, it isn't infrastructure. We know that water is infrastructure because you need it to live. We know that internet access is infrastructure because it's as important to economic success as a connection to the interstate highway system. But we also still know that roads and bridges are infrastructure, which is why we're here today celebrating this good news. And of course, it's a real pleasure to be here with Governor Hochul, a governor who understands the importance of infrastructure. I know this is a busy season for you right now, and for Chairman Kennedy and all of your colleagues getting this right. I just want to emphasize that good news continues to come because we have states stepping up alongside the federal government at long last after years and years of so-called infrastructure weeks that came and went without result. Working together now, all putting our money where our mouth is to make this America's infrastructure decade. And it does always feel, Governor, like it's always good news when I see you. A month ago, as she mentioned, we were in Buffalo celebrating that good news. A month before that, we were with the President celebrating that key piece of funding for the Hudson River Tunnel. And there is more good. We do not, for the record, play favorites, but there is more good news where that came from New York and for every part of the country. And I had a chance to speak with both Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand over the last couple of days. And while they can't be here, I know both of them are excited about this. And again, we're thankful to both of them for helping make all of this possible. So just over a century ago, there was a young, promising, intelligent, and curious Army lieutenant colonel who joined a cross-country convoy that was tasked with assessing our national infrastructure. And what he found and what he noted was a dangerous and poorly connected patchwork of roads and paths whose condition was not just an inconvenience for local economies, but actually a concern for national security as well, because it was unsuitable for national defense purposes. That young Lieutenant Colonel Dwight Eisenhower went on, of course, to become President of the United States. And when he did, with that experience as part of his foundation, he set out to do unprecedented work on the highways and bridges of the United States of America. And the interstate highway system that resulted from that transformed travel and commerce, revolutionized public safety, made American ingenuity the envy of the world, and arguably did more to knit this nation together physically than anything since the Transcontinental Railroad. And yet, over the decades, we allowed significant parts of that system to fall into a state of disrepair. Around 43,000 bridges nationwide are in poor condition. closures, or worse, have become more and more common. And the American people feel the impact. When bridges have to close for repairs, or when they begin to fail, it cuts off sometimes an entire community. It adds time to commutes. It costs money for businesses, as we were hearing about it. It can even delay ambulances and fire trucks from getting to where they need to be to respond to an emergency. It means truckers have to take longer routes, which means consumers have to pay more for deliveries, and working parents have to spend more money on gas and more time away from their kids. That's what this is really about. Bridges aren't just concrete, asphalt, and steel. They are engines of economic growth, and they are vital connections for communities. That is why the Biden-Harris administration is working to deliver the largest investment in America's bridges since President Eisenhower created the interstate highway system. And today we're proud to be announcing in 9 locations around the country that we are repairing key bridges, including this Castleton Bridge right here in New York State. And we're delighted to be doing that. About 17, yeah. That rate's a good one. About 17,000 people cross that bridge every day, and the project is set to save millions of dollars in travel costs, as well as saving taxpayers even more in maintenance costs. And it's about time, because if you look at that bridge, it represents the very latest engineering and construction that was available in the late 1950s. But today, it takes near monthly repairs just to keep it in service. And if you go, well, there is a great deal to be proud of around here, and the work that has been done to keep the bridge operating is heroic. If you actually Google the Castleton Bridge, you'll find a bunch of 1-star reviews from travelers expressing their frustration about what it takes to drive over it. So thankfully, this project's going to include a new eastbound bridge deck, a crash-tested railing for safety, better drainage, which is going to help prevent hydroplaning, and all of that is going to make the Castleton Bridge dramatically safer for the people who count on it, and cut down on emergency repairs, which means fewer of those delays and detours and closures. And that's in addition to the construction project already underway to replace the westbound bridge deck. Together, these projects are set to extend the useful life of this bridge by another 50 years. Meaning that our children and grandchildren will one day have a chance to take advantage of it too, and I would hope leave their own 5-star Google reviews about their experience. And again, this is one of 9 bridges that, or sets of bridges that we're fixing in this latest round of grants. We've got projects in places like San Diego and Madison, as well as some of the most rural parts of the country, from the Oklahoma Panhandle to rural South Carolina. All told, now, as of now, we have launched work on more than 4,600 bridge repairs, replacements, and rehabilitations across the country, from small overpasses that serve as the only road connecting a small rural town to national iconic landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge. What that means is not just about the physical infrastructure, it's about lives getting better, and a whole lot of good-paying jobs for American workers. And I want to emphasize, as my colleagues and I are fanning out across the country, that this is one of many ways that the Biden-Harris administration is investing in America. And it's working. Since the president took office, we have seen the creation of a record 12 million new jobs. We're seeing some of the lowest unemployment rates in 50 years, and the private sector has invested over $425 billion in new manufacturing, including here in New York State. Seniors on Medicare and millions more can now get insulin for just $35 a month. 16 million more households already have new access or better access to affordable high-speed internet. And now every week we are seeing announcements like today's and starting to see shovels hit the ground on infrastructure projects like this one. Now, unbelievably, and yet all too believably, even this can be a partisan or political issue in Washington, as we see legislation being put forward by some, I would say some, not all, of our Republican friends across the aisle who would want to reverse some of the work that we're doing, which would, of course, increase the costs that we have been fighting to lower. But I think that when you get outside of the precincts of Capitol Hill, you find pretty quickly that this need not be a partisan or political issue, because everyone is better off when we have the right kind of infrastructure that we can count on for the rest of our lives. So I want to again commend and applaud all of the local leadership that has gone into making this project a success in a very competitive round of funding. And I want to thank everyone who has helped make it possible under the President's leadership and with support from leaders like Representative Tonko, Leader Schumer, and Senator Gillibrand to partner with state leaders like Governor Hochul and her colleagues to deliver on this infrastructure decade that's going to make us proud for many more decades to come. With that, I thank you again for being part of this celebration.